most of my photography is like travel at this point, like going camping somewhere for a weekend or a longer trip on a break, like a school break. Um, I don't really have time to go out consistently during the week, but so it's tough, but when it's definitely a priority for me. So I try to do it as much as I can.
Yeah, your portfolio is awesome. Looks great.
Thank you, appreciate it. Summers too. I'm about to graduate, so about to lose the concept of summers, but I definitely took advantage of the summers for sure. So,
Well, congrats. It's a big
thank you,
achievement.
appreciate it. I graduate next Saturday. So,
Wow.
mhm.
I lost Elizabeth. There she is. Must be playing with her puppy.
Yelling at the puppy is more like it.
Elizabeth, you should strap a little GoPro to the puppy so it bring some interesting video to.
All you're gonna see is the ground. She's only like 4 inches off the ground.
Working on it. Oh, I didn't know.
Put her like on her head, like a headlamp or something.
That would be funny because she doesn't stop moving.
uh, well, shall we get started?
Yeah.
You want me to just start or?
Yeah, go ahead and we'll do the meeting after.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody to Menomonee Falls Camera Club for May 5th. Tonight we have the guest speaker of Henry Doyle. Henry is a 22-year-old wildlife photographer and conservation advocate specializing in avian subjects. Since picking up a camera in 2018, his work has taken him to Africa, Alaska, and beyond in pursuit of striking bird and nature imagery. A student of economics, sustainability, and society at Xavier University, where I guess he's graduating this
Yeah,
month.
I got to update that bio in a second. Yeah,
Yeah, you're gonna have to update that.
yeah.
Henry combines his love of photography with a mission to protect the natural world. He has guided birding tours for events like the Biggest Week and the Michigan Audubon, and has delivered over 30 webinars on nature photography. He was suggested by Gary from Hunt's Photo and Video. Gary's been helping me in finding all sorts of new speakers that we haven't seen for both Menomonee Falls now and for the Digital Forum group. So I thank Gary for all his help in giving me a lot of good insight on some new and young speakers. So Henry, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for having me tonight. Let me just share my screen here. Let's see. Can everybody see it okay?
Yes.
Good?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Yeah, so first of all, before I start, I just want to thank Gary for putting this together. So if you guys don't know Gary Farber, he's affiliated with Hunt's Photo and Video. They're not only a great place to buy from, but Gary is a great guy to work with. I've known Gary for over 6 years now. Actually going to Panama with him next month. So he's a good friend of mine, and highly recommend Hunt's Photo and Video. So thank you guys for having me. Tonight I'm going to be talking about warbler photography. So really this is a great talk you guys picked for this time of the year because depending on where you live, I know you guys are kind of more north, but kind of throughout the country, things are starting to kick off with migratory songbirds in the spring. So I'll be talking about that tonight. Just want to give a little bit of an introduction about myself. The bio covered it pretty well, but currently living in Cincinnati. Like the bio said, I'm graduating soon here in May, but plan on sticking around the area. I do get questions sometimes on these talks about camera systems. So I'm using Canon I know in this photo I'm using an Nikon, but I've switched since then. Hopefully I don't get any hate mail or anything. Just really came down to a lens I wanted to use. But that's the camera gear I use. I don't really focus on that in this talk, but just wanted to mention that. And I really love nature photography, specifically birds in general. That's kind of what I focus on. I've been really into that side of things since 2020. I was in high school, really bored. I had a camera already, and then I discovered that I can point my lens at birds. So I got hooked. Since then, I've been all over the place. The picture here was me in Newfoundland last summer. I went up there to photograph puffins and gannets, so two different types of seabirds. That was a great trip, and I tried to get pretty much all my time and my money, free time, and my money is spent on finding these birds and photographing them. So I'm really passionate about it. And I'm happy to be presenting on warblers tonight because I've dedicated a lot of my time to them specifically. Like it was mentioned in the bio, I was actually a warbler guide last summer for most of the summer. I worked for Michigan Audubon Society up in northern Michigan. I was guiding for the Kirtland's warbler. It's the rarest songbird in North America. So I got to spend every day for many weeks taking people out to see that. So really passionate about this type of subject and happy to talk about it. So just a little overview of tonight's presentation. I'll kind of briefly go over what a warbler is. Not everybody knows. Often I'll be telling friends or family about what I've been photographing, and they have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. So I'll just give a brief overview of that. I'll talk about how I plan my shots as I've kind of gone through my photography. I kind of plan more and more. I talk about what kind of conditions you need for good warbler photography. Talk about some gear, and with that, camera settings when it comes to photographing these birds. I would argue that it's one of the most challenging subjects you can photograph just because of how small they are, how fast they generally move. So I'll definitely be focusing a lot on that. And I have a lot of photo examples. I don't just like to have text on the screen. I like to have some photos. And what I love about warblers is just the general diversity of subjects you can photograph. So I'll be showing lots of different species, lots of different lighting, habitats, stuff like that. I also want to mention too, I'm perfectly open to questions. I love answering questions. Feel free to unmute during the presentation and ask one. You're welcome to wait till after. It's a little hard for me to see the chat, so I prefer if you can to just ask your question with the microphone. So let's get into the presentation here. So just a little background of what a warbler is. So fun fact, they're actually called warblers because of their distinct sound. The word warble isn't really used very much anymore, but it does mean like producing like a kind of a melodic song. And that's actually how I find warblers usually is by their song. So I think the title of warbler is very pertinent. They're generally migratory. So for the most part, most of the species you'll find will come from the neotropics. There's warblers that come from the Bahamas. There's warblers that come from Colombia, Brazil. There's some that come from more northern regions like Mexico or even Florida. There are some that are year-round residents in some areas. So like a yellow-rumped warbler, for example, at least where I'm based in Ohio, stays year-round. But for the most part, these warblers are migratory. And there's pros and cons to that. You don't get to photograph them year round, but I think they wouldn't be nearly as exciting as if they were here year round, as if they're migratory. So they come up north in the spring to breed. Their breeding grounds vary. Some breed in the southern United States, some breed all the way up in Canada, but they're moving north in the spring, and then they move south in the fall back to their wintering grounds. So where it's warmer, where there's more food. There's lots of subclasses within this. There's thrushes, willow warblers. I'm not going to get into all that biology, but just know there's a lot of diversity to these guys. And I wanted to just give some examples of some warblers I photographed just to show how many different kinds you can get. So this is a northern Parula. Actually took this on a spring break trip to South Carolina about this time last year, or actually in April. So these guys they produce almost a buzzy sound. One of my favorites. They're not super hard to find, actually. You go anywhere with tall trees around a creek or around a lake, you're most likely to hear them. Can be hard to see them, but you'll hear them if you're there at the right time of year. I love the blue on this guy's head and back, and then the yellow on the chest. Most warblers are pretty much primarily yellow and black, but there are some that have the striking blue colors. So really enjoyed photographing this guy. And I consistently get a Parula, at least one or two in front of my lens every year. This is the yellow-throated warbler. Once again, photographed on that same trip to South Carolina. These are kind of at least for me, the earliest arrival, kind of the sign of spring for me. Their song's very iconic. Once you learn it, you'll never be able to unhear it. I even heard it. I live in an urban area for college. I even heard it in a tree here the other day. So one of my favorites. I haven't gotten a lot of chances with them. I find they can be kind of hard to photograph, but here's a shot I took of that last year. And then you have the common yellowthroat. So this you'll find it breeds pretty far south, so it can be found pretty widespread throughout the whole summer in North America. I really love this guy because it has almost a bandit-like mask and almost an olive kind of green color on its back. It's yellowish green and that striking yellow throat and chest. So love these guys. They're generally marsh birds, so what I do like to do with warblers is kind of include a little bit of their habitat. So I was able to get this guy perched on a cattail. I took this up in Ontario last year. I went to Point Pelee Provincial Park up there and photographed this guy there. Then you have pine warblers. Here he's perched on an aforementioned pine branch. Maybe it's kind of hard to tell, but those are also pines in the background because it's quite out of focus. But these guys are a little harder to find. They're kind of simple, but I love the yellow color they have. I love the little white bands on their wings, and just a super fun warbler to photograph. And everything I've shown so far was taken in the east, like the pine warbler I didn't mention, but this was taken in Michigan. But there's also warblers in the west. So I went to the tundras of Alaska about 4 years ago now, and I was able to get this guy, which is an Arctic warbler. Not as colorful, but this is actually the rarest warbler out of those images that I've shown. They have a nice subtle yellow to them, kind of a yellowish brown, and I was able to take a picture of him on the Alaskan willows here. So that's just kind of an overview of some of the different types you can get. I wish I had had time to edit the images I took this weekend. I went photographing in Shawnee State Forest in Ohio. It's a super diverse area. I was able to photograph hooded warbler, cerulean warbler, worm-eating warbler, all kinds. So there's tons of variety you can get. And this barely scratches the surface, honestly. We could be here all night just going through the different types. So I want to talk a little bit
I have a
about.
quick question for you, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
go ahead. Of course.
Have you shot in McGee Marsh, and what did you think of that?
Yeah, so I go to McGee Marsh every year. I've guided actually up there a couple years, and I really like it. You have to contend with crowds. So for anybody who doesn't know, McGee Marsh is that's the site of the biggest week in American birding festival. And it's this boardwalk, and it is amazing for warbler photography. For some reason, it's just kind of the geography. It's right on Lake Erie, and the habitat creates a great combination for photography. These warblers will come right up to you. They're very eye level generally, but it is pretty crowded. So you have to manage the crowds. But I really enjoyed it. It's like a social event for me too. I always run into people I know. And I'll be going up next week actually. So definitely a big fan of that. But
Okay.
I always feel like I have to balance with, like, last weekend I went to a forest where nobody was. So I like to do a mix of kind of solo photography and then extremely crowded photography. So talking about planning your shoot, I want to cover the time of the year. So I like photographing these birds in the springtime in the US. You can either follow the migration of birds north, so you can photograph migratory species. So like McGee Marsh, for example, you'll be photographing migrants primarily moving north. I also like going to the breeding grounds of these birds occasionally. Um, there are some good species that breed in Ohio around me. Like I mentioned, the cerulean and hooded warbler. Um, Generally, they're more set to a territory. So if you find, say, a hooded warbler on its breeding ground, you can come back for a couple weeks while it's still singing and kind of consistently find it. Migrants, you have to kind of get lucky, but I would say maybe the potential is higher. You could get a day where a bunch of migrant birds flew in overnight and they're feeding in the morning, kind of feeding, getting ready to fly again. So you could get an intense variety and a lot of volume. But if you want consistency, I'd say breeding grounds may be better. I do want to give the note, though, you want to be very respectful on breeding grounds of warblers because they're trying to establish their nests and potentially raising young. So you just want to give them space and be respectful. So warblers also return in the fall. Like I said, they come from north to south. Um, I don't like photographing them as much in this time. They do have a less colorful plumage generally, so they'll lose some of their color. You can still tell what it is generally, but just not as striking. I also find it's harder to find them. I kind of feel like they're more spread out when they're heading south. I don't know that for sure, but that's what it feels like to me. And it's stretched over a longer period of time, so it's not just one big push or two big pushes. It's kind of a more gradual thing from late August to early October. And generally, I'm at least focused on other things in the fall. I like to go for elk and bears and stuff. I go to the Smokies, so generally, I don't really get to them in the fall. And because I dedicate so much time in the spring, I don't feel a super big need to do that. So when talking about migrating warblers, I like to use a couple different tools, and I'll cover those here. So I like to use birdcasts. This has become quite a popular tool for birders and photographers. But you could basically see heavy migration nights. So I have a screenshot here of May 16th, 2023. So you can see all the volume of birds moving north. This is great if you're thinking of going out. Maybe you only have one day out of a week that you could go out and shoot, but you have some flexibility on which day that is. You could look at the birdcast map, see a projected high night, and go out and hope to get some migrants. There's been times I've gone out on big migration nights the morning after, and there have just been warblers everywhere. They're bouncing around low in the foliage, kind of feeding and ready to go north. So really tools like birdcast help. It's not the only thing I use, but it's definitely helpful. And then I also use eBird. There's so many different things you can do with eBird. For anybody who doesn't know, it's kind of a repository for sightings. People can post the sightings they've seen at different hotspots. I like to look at the bar chart feature on eBird. So you can see, let's say the blue-winged warbler. You can see what week in April or what week in May it generally shows up in your area. So maybe you're looking for that species. If it's too early or too late to go out for that bird. Obviously, there can be exceptions, but seeing all the history on eBird can really help you if you're targeting a specific species. I also like to look at the media. So you can see the top media on the right-hand side of the screen, and I'll filter by month. So I'll put maybe the April and May filter and at a hotspot and see all the different subjects you can see during that time period. So next, I want to talk about habitat for warblers. Warblers are very specific generally. There are some generalist species, but for the most part, I find that they like very specific habitats. So I'm going to give a couple of different examples of habitats and then the warblers associated with that. So this is a short, scrubby, deciduous, or I'm sorry, coniferous forest. And there's a very specific type of warbler found here, and that's called the prairie warbler. Um, so this is a picture of that subject. And I go back to this one forest in my local area every year. It's not really known. It's not really on eBird. So this is just a case of habitat I found in the off season. I saw all these trees. I knew prairie warblers liked this kind of open environment, but with some trees around. So I came back in the spring about 3 years ago now, and turns out that it was a mecca for these prairie warblers. No really other species have been found there, at least in my experience. But these guys are great, and I go back year after year. I've already been back this year and was able to get similar results like I do every year because I know this spot and I know the habitat is great for them. And this is their breeding ground, so they're here throughout the summer, but in the spring they're singing the most, so it's easiest to find them. So you can see here the prairie warblers perch on one of the little pine trees, cedar pine trees here. And here's just another shot of the prairie warbler chowing down on a spider's web. He likely just ate a spider here. Got another example I wanted to provide. So this was me last summer working as the bird guide up in Michigan for the Kirtland's warbler. Like I said, this is the rarest songbird in North America. That's because they are very, very specific on habitat. So they will nest at the base of these jack pine trees that you can see behind me. And these trees will only grow in a specific combination of sandy soil. So Michigan, as it's become more developed, you got cities like Detroit, Grand Rapids, less and less of this jack pine habitat exists. So you really have to go to a specific spot for these guys. But once you get to that habitat, they're literally everywhere. My job was not super hard. For reference, I did about 60 tours, and there were only 3 when we didn't see the bird. So here's the Kirtland's warbler perched on its iconic jack pine. Got a spider in its mouth once again. This is actually one of the larger warblers. They're quite big. I'd compare it to a white-throated sparrow in size. Got the beautiful blue-gray markings and the kind of the softer yellow chest. And here's a Kirtland's warbler perched on a dead jack pine. So they're very, very specific. But like I said, once you find that habitat, you're very likely to find the bird. So another specific bird I wanted to talk about when it comes to habitat is the prothonotary warbler here. These are almost an orange, kind of a yellow-orange type of songbird. Their nickname is the candle of the woods, at least where I'm from in Kentucky, because these are found everywhere in the swamps. So they like these kind of flooded, I believe the actual term is flooded bottomland. So it's not necessarily a swamp year-round, but it's a forest that floods frequently. And these prothonotary warblers are cavity nesters. So they'll build their nests in holes in trees, kind of similar to a screech owl, for example. Not many warblers are cavity nesters, so that makes these guys unique, and they love the swamps. So if you go to a swamp, like McGee Marsh, for example, you're very likely to find these guys. So this prothonotary here, I took in Cincinnati, Ohio, just in a local park. I was walking around along a river, and I heard these guys, and I was able to find him. And then this is one that was taken at McGee Marsh. Fun fact about this individual, he actually nested in the boardwalk next year, or sorry, not next year, last year. So he built his nest in a little hole in one of the wooden railings. So they had to kind of tape off the area. But, because of this, he was very approachable, very used to all the humans that were walking throughout the day. So I was able to get super close without disturbing him and get some detail on him. So this is a little bit hard to fully cover on a visual presentation. But I cannot stress enough how important knowing your sounds or your calls or songs for the warblers is. So this is really the way I find these birds. I listen for their calls. And we are lucky nowadays that we have Merlin Bird ID as a tool. So that's a free app through the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. You just press record on your phone. I generally like to point my microphone on my phone towards the sound, and it'll identify the bird for you. But I think once you've photographed warblers for a few years, you start to notice the distinctions between the sounds. And this is really how you find them, especially when the leaves are out. The green leaves, it's going to be hard to see them, even with really good binoculars or a really long lens. So I listen for the sounds first, and that'll kind of tell you what general area they're in. Then you can get to that area, and then you look with your eyes to find them. And like I said, all the sounds are at least somewhat distinct. And as you get more skilled with these guys, you'll be able to discern them. Some sounds are more buzzy, some are more melodic, some are shorter, some are longer. But I'll tell you that it only gets easier year to year. Another reason I like spring more than fall too is generally they're singing more. In fall, I find warblers to be much quieter, so really increases the challenge. So next, I want to talk about ideal weather conditions. So I actually like cloudy skies for warblers. This isn't a complete 100% rule. I will still go out on sunny days. All of us are constrained by time, so sometimes we have to go out when lighting's not totally ideal. But I like cloudy skies because it provides nice diffused light on the subject, doesn't create a lot of harsh shadows. I think there are some birds, like let's say a sparrow, which is all brown, maybe some different shades, but generally it's pretty drab. I like some sunlight on that, like some direct sun, but I think warblers are striking enough on their own that neutral lighting can lend well. I find even a little bit of light rain is okay. I don't know the science behind this, but I do find that when it's raining, the birds will stick a little bit lower to kind of stay away from the raindrops. Maybe they're less likely to fly around as much, kind of keeps them more in one place. Obviously, you don't want to go out in heavy rain. You're not going to have a lot of fun, and your camera won't have a lot of fun. But some light drizzle is okay. Like this magnolia warbler here, it was straight up raining when I took this shot. I don't really like wind for warblers. So because they're so small, if they're perched in a tree, wind can really obstruct them. Like a leaf could kind of bounce in front of them in the wind. Also, I find they generally don't come as low in the wind. That's just my experience, but I would suggest avoiding very windy days if you can. And then I also called out here fallout. So there's a phenomenon that happens with migrating warblers. After storms, you can have a warbler fallout. I've only experienced this one or two times. It's basically the storm will push the birds down prematurely. So large numbers of birds will kind of descend on one area. And it is a crazy kind of frenzy to experience, seeing these migrating birds everywhere from the storms. So there does become a point where the storms are too harsh for them to fly. So they'll just be forced to come to a single area. This is really something you have to get lucky on. Some people get super specific and look at the weather patterns and try to predict it. I've been down that route before. It's really hard to get a good prediction on fallout. So that's just something I think it comes from spending the time out of the field and really getting lucky. So if you have sunny conditions, I would try to go out in the early morning or late evening. Maybe that first hour of daylight and the last hour of daylight. You can get some nice golden light on your subjects. It can be hard for sure because you have to kind of think about direction. But there's different things you can play with. You could do a silhouette. You could do a nice frontlit, portrait, side light for some dramatic effects. So I'm going to show a couple examples here of some different light that I've been able to photograph on warblers. So here's a side light shot of a prairie warbler. Once again, taken at my local Ohio patch. Um, as you can see, it really creates kind of a dramatic look. The warbler's nice and bright, not necessarily overexposed because it wasn't super, the sun wasn't super high, so it wasn't super harsh. And then for the most part, the background's falling into shade. Really love this effect. And I have an even more dramatic example of side light here in a minute. And then you have neutral light. Once again, another prairie warbler. I have so many examples of this subject in all types of light just because it's so accessible to me. But I think neutral light lends really well. You may have to add a little bit more contrast in your editing than you might normally do, but you don't have to worry about direction. You don't have to place yourself in accordance with the sun. You can kind of place yourself wherever the composition looks best. And then here's a really striking example of side light on a prothonotary warbler. So I actually took this shot at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So the sun was extremely harsh, pretty much exactly over my head. But I was able to find a spotlight in the dense forest kind of right on this bird. And I exposed for that. So I lowered my exposure compensation in my camera. I shoot an auto ISO to kind of get that spotlight effect and throw the background into like a black or dark green background. So I want to talk a little bit about gear. I would say use the longest lens you have. 500 millimeter above, I would suggest. I've done shots with 400 millimeters, but anything below that is pretty hard. There are occasionally situations you could use a 70-200, and I've done that a couple times, but that was pretty extreme. Like at McGee Marsh, for example, the birds come so close that you could do that, but most other places I find it's really hard. I like to use a crop camera often, so it crops in on your lens. I have an R7, Canon R7, so it'll turn my 100-500 into a almost 900 millimeter lens at the long end. It's like 860 or something. So I really like that for these tiny birds. I mean, some of them are no bigger than a few inches. Somebody have a question? Nope. Okay. So crop camera, if the light's good, obviously the downside to a crop sensor camera is you're not going to be able to work in dark conditions as easily. So I have a full frame and a crop camera. So depending on the lighting, I'll switch between the two. You really need some good autofocus or at least some good focusing techniques. These birds are moving constantly. I find it's very, very rare that a warbler will actually stand still. So if you have a camera with eye tracking, I would highly recommend that. And then I like to be handheld because often I find maybe there's a leaf in the way. I need to adjust myself, move to the left a little bit, move to the right a little bit. I try to be eye level with the subject, so maybe I need to bend down a little bit or lay on the ground, even if it's more of a ground dwelling warbler. So I like to be handheld. Understand that's not a possibility for everyone. So if you can, I'd say a monopod would be good if you need some support. Maybe you have a longer lens or you have mobility issues. The monopod will still allow you to react to the quick movements of the warbler. I've used a monopod before for warblers, and I definitely like it. It's definitely better than a tripod because of how often they move around. So talking a little bit about camera settings, fast shutter speed is super important. Like I said, warblers are incredibly fast. On the right here, I've got a female black-throated blue. This is a rare case where the bird actually stood still for a second. I'd say in poor light, your minimum should be 1/500th of a second. Now, I want to give this with a caveat. If the subject moves at all, it's going to be blurry. They move so fast and so often that you will get motion blur. But if the light's poor, and especially if you have a zoom lens like me, I don't have the widest aperture, so I have to make sure my ISO is low. So I'm willing to sacrifice 100% sharp shots if I'm taking a burst for that one moment where the bird freezes and I get the good quality, if that makes sense. Now, if the light's better, I go up more. I go up more. Ideally up to 1/800th of a second as my minimum. And then if the light's, really strong, I'll go up to 2,000th of a second, 3,200th. But I like to keep my ISO below that 6,400 mark. So, camera settings are it's all a balancing act. You can either risk some motion blur, but get a better quality image, or you can ensure there's not going to be motion blur and have a really noisy image. And I really don't like noise, so I generally go for the lower shutter speed route. And just touching a little bit more on autofocus settings. So there's different ways you can do it. I like to do a single point with tracking enabled, so I can move my autofocus point around the frame, set the focus on the bird, and then I have a mirrorless camera, so it'll track the bird, hopefully the eye if it's close enough. I like to lower the tracking speed of my camera, so this is getting kind of technical here, but I lower the speed of the tracking. I find if the tracking is accelerated too much, it'll get confused by the motion of the bird, and it might catch onto a leaf, or it might catch onto a branch. So lowering the tracking speed, I know on Canon this is like autofocus case settings. By lowering that, the autofocus will generally be more sticky. And I use servo AF, so that's very important. What that means is the focus point is constantly focusing versus a one shot or a one-time autofocus. And I just want to give kind of a warning here. With warblers, most of your shots are going to be blurry, even if you have a high shutter speed. Just the nature of these guys, how small they are, how fast they move, how hard it can be to even follow them with your camera. It is definitely a low hit rate subject. And then, like I kind of touched on before, you want to prepare for high ISOs. So, like I've said, the high shutter speed to freeze the action will cause a high ISO. Like I mentioned, I was in a forest this weekend shooting. I was often in the 3,200 and up range, and that was with 1/500th of a shutter speed for the most part. So you're going to have a higher ISO. Most of these warblers thrive in the woods, so the nature of the sun getting diffused through the leaves will just mean that you're not going to have as much light as you may be used to, maybe shooting shorebirds or owls or something. So you just got to be prepared for that. Shooting at the widest aperture will help. Highly recommend this. Even if your max aperture is f8, that's better than shooting stop down a little bit. I'd also consider denoise software. So these have gotten really, really good. Every year I'm more pleased by the results I get. I use DxO Pure Raw, but I know Lightroom's built-in tool is great. I know Topaz denoise is a good one. It really saves some shots for me that otherwise I would probably just delete from my computer. Most of my warbler images are run through some kind of denoise. And then I just want to give a couple examples here of shots I took at high ISO, just to show the power of denoise. So this is an ovenbird. So this is a thrush. So it's in that kind of the same family as robins, actually, but obviously very different than a robin. Took this up in northern Michigan. It was a very foggy day, very cloudy day. And believe it or not, I took this image at ISO 12,800. And using denoise software, I was able to recover it. It's probably not as clean as a lower ISO image, but I'm still happy with the result. I still posted it, still saved it on my computer. So it just shows that these softwares are powerful. And you can still encounter high ISOs no matter what you do. I did take this shot at a very low shutter speed, but sometimes you're just going to have the high ISO. And then sometimes I even shoot before dawn. I remember specifically, I took this Wilson's warbler about 20 minutes before the sun rose, went down to a super low shutter speed here, 1/100th of a second, and I still had to use denoise. I was at ISO 800. This is not a super tight image, but I still like it. And it was still recoverable using denoise and some of the other techniques. So talking about photographing these birds specifically, I'd say patience is key, absolutely crucial. Warblers require a lot of time. I was really not happy with any of my images for about the first 2 years of doing this. Sometimes you just have to wait. So first image here is a Blackburnian warbler. I actually have a lot of trouble photographing these guys. I have not photographed a Blackburnian since I took this image almost 4 years ago. But basically in this shot, I saw a perch it was preferring. It only came about every 30 minutes or so, but I waited and eventually I got the shot. So you really just have to sometimes sit back, observe. I like to bring binoculars, so I'll watch the bird behavior with my binoculars. Does it have a favorite perch, or does it have a general region it likes to prefer? Does it like to go higher up? Does it like to go lower in the bushes, or does it prefer trees? All of these birds have preferences. I mentioned habitat preferences, but I find that individual birds even have preferences. Like there are some warblers species that, like a Blackburnian, I might find one that's super cooperative, but one might want nothing to do with me. So there is a lot of variation, and you just have to kind of understand the behavior and really just wait for these guys. Same thing with this Northern Parula. So I could pretty easily get a shot of this guy, but I wanted to include some Spanish moss with this subject because I photographed it in South Carolina, wanted to show off one of the iconic plants in the area. So I knew the I knew the Parula was in this general area. So I kind of found the zone I wanted him to be in, and I just waited for him to pass through that zone. And took this shot. Was lucky enough to get him singing. And then another thing that I think is really important is looking for clean backgrounds. So the more distance your subject has from the background, the more blurred it'll be. Also, the closer you are to your subject, the more blur in the background there will be. So it also depends on your lens. So another reason I like using cropped cameras, I can give the perception of a much tighter image in a much blurrier background because I am putting more compression on the subject. So really look for the distance to the background. Like this prairie warbler image I took, the background was probably about 50 to 60 feet away from me. It's a combination of trees and bushes, produced this nice clean background. And it can even work for kind of smaller and frame compositions. The distant trees here were far enough away that it was still pretty smooth. You could still make out some of the texture in the trees, but you could definitely tell that the subject stands out. That's really the main thing. You want the subject to stand out from the background. And people have different preferences on how much blur they have. Also depends on your lens too. If you have a 600 f4, for example, your background's going to be very blurry. You shoot at f4. So it can really depend on your preferences as well. Got a palm warbler here, just with an example of a nice blurry background. I also love including some of the plants in the foreground to kind of show the habitat that these warblers inhabit. And then I've kind of given a couple warnings about this, but you really need to watch for obscuring branches. So stray branches in your images and stray leaves can ruin shots. So there's been times I photograph a bird and I think I got it in tack sharp focus, and maybe I did, but there was a leaf between my lens and the subject, and you can still see through the leaf just with the way depth of field works, but there's almost a haze on the image. And this happens quite a bit, actually, especially when you're working in kind of a woodland area. So I like to zoom in on my camera. So I press the little magnifier button and I'll punch in on the subject and make sure there's no obstructions. Now, sometimes this can play to your advantage. So if you can find a little window, so maybe a little opening in a bush between you and the subject, you can get almost some blur in the foreground around the subject. Like this prairie warbler here, I've got kind of a nice frame produced by shooting through a bush. Here's another example of that here. You can see I kind of found a nice window around the subject. And then one more example, the foreground elements aren't necessarily blurred here, but I think the sticks kind of create a nice frame around this black and white warbler. Even the background as well. If you notice, I placed him in kind of the less chaotic part of the background. There's some busier leaves above him and below him, but the spot he's placed in is that nice distant creamy background. So I like to do that because it really helps the subject stand out and be separated from the background. And that's really going to be your greatest challenge, in my opinion, is making these tiny, tiny birds stand out. So it's a combination of that long focal length and or proximity to your bird and a nice distant background and a pleasing background too. You know, I don't generally like blue skies. I think it's just a little too, I don't know if I'd say basic, but just to me, it's a little too simple. I like a little bit of texture, but also to kind of show some color back there. So to kind of wrap up my talk here, I started out with showing some of the diversity of subjects you can get. I've got one more example of that here with the yellow warbler, probably the most common and iconic warbler you can find. So I talked about the diversity. I talked about kind of what goes into planning your shoot. Talked about weather conditions, you know, targeting for cloudy days with minimal winds. Talked about the bird cast tool and eBird, Merlin, some of the different tools you can use for your warbler photography. I covered camera settings, so how to freeze the motion of the subject, how to get pleasing backgrounds, use foreground and background elements to enhance your images. And I just kind of talked about habitat as well, where to go to find these birds, what to listen for, what to look for. So yeah, that's my talk on warblers. Super passionate about these guys, so happy to answer any questions about them. Happy to answer any general photography questions as well. Open to anything. So thank you,
I have a
guys.
question.
Yeah, of course.
How far away are you usually from the birds?
So often super, super close. I'd say between 6 to 10 feet, sometimes even closer. Last weekend, for example, I was within 4 feet of a cerulean warbler. So you really have to be close because you got to keep in mind these birds are about this big. It's not like you're shooting an eagle or something. You have to be pretty much on top of the subject to get a nice frame filling shot. So.
And do you usually like stand or sit or lay down completely when you watch them or wait for them?
I think it depends on the height of where it's kind of foraging or perched. So if the bird is higher up, I'll try to stand, but if it's in a bush, kind of lower, I'll try to kneel down. Often I find laying down is just a little bit too low for warblers. They're not often on the ground. There are exceptions, but generally they're more at knee level or above height. So I think it really depends on where the subject is moving.
Thank you.
Yep. And I guess you brought up a good point too. Sometimes I like to stand on a little hill because warblers are often at the top of trees. So if I can get some elevation and already be a little higher up, it can give me a leg up. So.
Question,
Henry, thanks for your presentation. Do you happen to know of any Wisconsin sites that we might be able to see warblers?
I'm not super familiar with Wisconsin. I do know that, let me go back to the Kirtland's warbler real quick. Sorry for the fast skipping here. Let me just. So these guys, the Kirtland's warbler, are actually beginning to establish a small population in Wisconsin. I don't know where. I just kind of read about it in my research for the job last summer. But if you're interested in this species, I know they are beginning to establish in Wisconsin. I don't really know about any other spots, but like I talked about with habitat, if you're looking for specific species, look up the habitat. I would say do a quick Google search to confirm that the species could be found in your area. But if you go to the right habitat in the right time of year, which is honestly right now for you guys, it's I'd say for Wisconsin, it would be peak in the next week or so. So if you go to the right habitat, you have a good chance for these birds.
So if you're on Facebook, if you find the Wild Birds of Wisconsin Facebook group, Ware Nature Center is always a good place to go. In the past, Horicon Marsh has been good.
I've heard of that. Yeah, I've had friends who've gone there.
Yeah, Ware is always really good. Down along Lincoln Memorial, I think it's Lakeshore Park. There's usually a whole bunch. There's a bridge there that people can stand on. But I've seen a lot of pictures coming out of Ware right now, so I would check them out.
Okay,
Another
thank you.
couple of places is our Schlitz Autobahn. They're right on the lakefront. And then Mequon Nature Preserve I've seen several species there.
Yep, I think I've
Over the
seen
years.
postings from there too already. I mean, they're coming. They're starting to get
Oh yeah,
ready.
for sure.
So
I've been seeing a lot this last week at Pike Lake State Park.
It's been a early year for warblers in general. They've been moving earlier, I've noticed.
Yeah.
So you were saying that you identify the song and that helps you find the bird.
Mhm.
How widely varied are the songs between the different species? Are they all pretty similar?
So I'd say there's like groupings. So there's like there's like a buzzy category of songs that are pretty similar. They're distinct enough that once you listen to them back to back, you'll notice the differences. So there's like buzzy songs. There's more like almost symphonic songs. But it really just takes practice. I've got an app with like all the calls, and I'll just listen occasionally. It can be challenging, but I think they're different enough that you can start to tell the difference with some practice. Any other questions?
Quiet group tonight.
Well, great images. I didn't realize that warblers could be so interesting. Thank you for.
Oh yeah, I
interesting.
love them. And honestly, I don't even know how I stumbled across these subjects. I just kind of fell into it, and I'm literally obsessed now. So it's all I shoot in the spring.
I finally got myself the blue-gray gnat catcher last year.
Oh, cool. Yeah, love those guys.
Yeah.
They're one of the early ones.
Yep. So they're at Ware right now.
Cool. Their noises or their sounds are a little bit annoying to me. Nails on a chalkboard.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
Well, thank you very much. This was
very
good.
Thank you guys so much. Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you, Henry.
Thank you, Henry, and Gary at Hunts for pointing him out to me. It was great to learn a little bit. I'm not a big bird photographer, so I'm still learning about it. But no, as this was very interesting and some really nice photos too.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I know how difficult they are because they're so small.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Is that
I haven't gone through
behind you though?
Yeah, it's a short-eared owl.
Yeah.
Took it up in Dayton, Ohio last winter. So
yeah, we got a spot here that we get them every winter.
Awesome. I just put my email in chat. Feel free if you guys want to ask me any questions about warblers or anything else with photography. Happy to help. So
awesome, thank you.
Of course.
Great, thank you.
And Jeffrey, I think I will sign off if that's all good once you guys start.
That's fine. Portion.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
I imagine you got things to do, especially if you're graduating.
Yeah, got a final. So.
Yep. I could understand that. So great.
Well, thank you guys so much
again. Especially for doing this on sort of short notice.
Of course.
Appreciate it, and I'll
it's
be
easy
in contact.
to talk about in May. So if it was, October, I might have reservations, but May, it's easy. So yeah,
Yeah, I sort of thought this might be a good time for that
yeah,
talk, and
yeah.
we just
For
had
sure.
this opening, and I go, great, let's see if we can get it filled. So
Yeah.
super.
All right. Well, have a good evening, guys. Thank you.
Yep, you
Thank
too.
you.
Good luck in your finals.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, that was good timing. To
Yep.
have-
Well, I got lucky on that one. I was just trying to see if there's any warbler sounds. Well, here, I don't know how well this will play. It's not likely in Richfield. Let's see, where's the sound part?
Yeah, well, there's not a stork is not likely in Fond du Lac, but there it is.
Yeah.
No,
But if you don't have it, pick up that Merlin app from Cornell University. It's really a nice bird app.
yep.
For
I start mine when I get in the auto tour of HorrorCon and just let it run while I'm driving the auto tour, and all these birds just keep popping in.
yeah.
I never get to see half of them, but they're out there.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
also a great app if you take a picture of a bird, you're not sure what it is.
Yep.
You can
Yeah.
identify the pic from the picture.
Yep.
All right.
All right, Elizabeth, it's all yours for whatever.
All right. Do we want to start with Wacko and PSA? Do we have anything?
Be honest, I wasn't there at the WACO meeting, so I have no idea what they even talked about or if there's anything coming up that we need to worry about.
Yeah, I don't think there is.
There was some interest in doing the sunflower shoot again. So I'll be trying to schedule that in the middle of August.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, there is no spring competition, or was no spring competition.
We
Because I
we
wasn't
probably will be
available.
doing prints in spring of 2027.
I did hear that.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to read the minutes that got sent out from it. So
All right.
Ken and Pat know what's going on, but I don't.
Anything in PSA? I know the outing's coming up.
Right, they have their outing up to Green Bay,
That's
and
gotta
then
be
they're
next
quiet
week.
over the summer. Photo festival is this fall, and we'll be in Las Vegas, which I know some people aren't all that interested in, but I can tell you that Las Vegas has a lot of great photo opportunities. You've got Valley of Fire, Red Rock Canyon, all sorts of nice parks really close by. Just stay out of the casinos if you go, because it's a great way to lose money.
Yeah.
But it used to be a great inexpensive place to stay. I haven't stayed there now in 10 years, so I have no idea if hotel rates are as good as they used to be. But if you stay on one end of the strip, you can hop on the freeway real easy and get to a lot of the parks, and the Hoover Dam, which right now is at an all-time low for water. Other than that, there's not much. Chapter will start up again in fall after this outing.
There's some unique photo opportunities that they've got set up where they take the buses out to different locations. But one of the things that sounded really interesting is there's a neon light museum there, and they've got a private time to have everybody come and photograph that belongs to PSA to come and photograph the neon lights when nobody else is there.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah, it's a neat junkyard for the old neon lights that they used to have along the strip.
Huh.
Yeah, Vegas has a lot of good opportunities, and there's usually a lot of good, inexpensive flights to get into Vegas. So it's not the worst place in the world to go, as long as you don't gamble.
Well,
I
it's
went
not
there
that far.
25 years in a row, and I lost money every year.
It's not that far from Utah with all its monuments up there, wonderful shooting opportunities.
Right. And it's actually only 2-3 hours away from Death Valley, which can be really nice. I like shooting that actually in spring when if they have a wet season, and then they have all their wildflowers that pop up. And I usually was going to Vegas twice a year, and spring and fall, and spring was always a good time to hit a lot of different spots. So
Cool. All right, Brian, do you want to talk about Saturday?
Sure, love to. So this Saturday we'll be at Shady Lane Greenhouse. So there's information in the newsletter, but in summary, they open at 8. We're saying, start to congregate around 8:30. Just give a little chance to get organized, and please park out back. Save they're going to be really busy that day, so please save the front parking, which is somewhat limited for the paying customers. There will be the trains will be running that day. There will also be some food available. I was out there a couple of weeks ago, and I think everything ought to be pretty much at its prime. So yeah, I hope to see a lot of you there. It's been one of our more popular gatherings, and hope to see you there. And please support Shady Lane and buy some flowers while you're there. Their stock is really fantastic. So hope to see a lot of you there on Saturday.
My wife and I were out there today buying plants ahead of Mother's Day, and there's a lot of cool stuff in bloom. It's a lot of color. It's pretty cool. So I wish I had my camera today, but I'll just take it on Saturday.
Yeah. And hopefully another week or so will be beyond the frost, the overnight frost. So I'll be safe to. I've been bringing stuff in overnight when some of these cold nights, but better days are ahead for planting outdoors.
So as long as you're talking, do you want to talk about June at the zoo?
Yeah, the big thing is please read what Ellen has in here, because everything has changed in terms of getting into the zoo. So I try to explain, when you you'd come in and you'd stop at the main gate and you'd have to line up and wait, but now you get to the main gate and you just go on in and you park. And the parking lot, I believe, opens at 8 a.m. So you can get in right away. You're going to pay using a QR code. So it sounds complicated, but it's really been working well for the general public. I was there last Sunday, a week ago, and things seem to be moving along very nicely. I'm told it's very similar to the system that they have at AmFam Field.
Yeah.
So, and then once you get in, take care of your parking. The ticket booths where you buy tickets are now outside. So you don't have to wait till the doors open like it used to be and go inside if you needed a ticket. So you can take care of your parking, go buy your ticket at ticket booth, and then the doors do open at 9:30. So
are we all meeting at a certain spot at a certain time? It's in the newsletter, right?
well, yeah, it's in the past. What I suggest is when you get in, and we normally congregate inside the main entry, inside the main entrance around 9, quarter till 9. So just when everybody gets there, we'll wait around for a while, and yeah, and then just go off, and some of us usually kind of stick together. And there is one thing that's really new is the new rhino and hippo exhibit for winter. So if you were there in the summertime, and I'm not sure this time of the year whether if the hippos will be outdoor. There's that big tank where you've seen them in the warmer months, but now there's a indoor area a little further off to the east. There's a path that goes up there, and so indoors during the winter there will be both the hippos and the rhinos, and then a little bit to the south will be an outdoor area for the rhinos during the better weather. So not sure what it's going to be, but so anyway, explore that area because it's really neat. They've really done a nice job of doing some nice things for hippos and for the rhinos. So
Good. All right. Well, because I always forget when we start with a presenter instead of the meeting. If we have any new people tonight, and it looks like I see one name I don't recognize, if you would like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Sure. Probably me, Brad
Yeah.
Wilkins, which you guys haven't seen. I appreciate joining, and I liked Henry's discussion on warblers. That was good.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of auditing. I used to teach a photo group at our church and did that for about 10 years. And I think the interest in the type of photography that I like started to wane. People were more interested in learning about using their iPhones, and that's important, but not something that I was that keen on teaching. So I've been kind of on my own. I'm a serious hobbyist. I've done a number of workshops through Munch workshops, if you're familiar with them. And, was looking at options around here for getting together with like-minded people to listen into things like this, to go on excursions or events where people photograph and talk about the hobby. I guess I'm serious because I've spent way too much money in the last several years.
Yeah, I understand.
It's easy to do. Golly.
Yes. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
And this is a very, very active group. We try to have a lot of outings, and unfortunately, we kind of take a few months in the summer off. But yeah, so we've got the Shady Lane for the flowers this coming Saturday, and then Brian coordinates probably 2 zoo trips a year. In July, that's our last meeting for this until the fall, and that's an in-person ice cream social. And then we break until, help me, September. Jeff?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So
yeah, August is our planning session.
So if you if you are not receiving the newsletter or the emails, if you want to put your email in the chat, we can get you on the list so you can get the newsletter. Ellen does an awesome job. They're amazing.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And they have all the information in there. Is Ellen
on
today? I haven't seen her. Otherwise, I'll make sure she gets it.
Yeah, I don't think she's on tonight.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Every meeting, we usually have 2 people who do a show and tell and share their images. Tonight was supposed to be Brian, but he filled in a couple months ago, so we don't have Brian doing that tonight, but we do have Jeff. So Jeff, if you are ready.
Elizabeth?
Yeah.
Could you make sure that I get his email also?
Yes, I will.
So when
you should be able to grab it out of the chat, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I just put it in there.
Yeah, I just have to get it to Ellen because she's not here to grab it. Do you see it, Pat? I'll just send out an email too. That's fine. We're good. Jeff, you can go.
Okay. Remember how to share here. Okay. Able to see my screen?
It's starting. There we go.
There
Okay.
it goes.
Good. We'll get this started. Okay, well, I'm going to talk about my moth photography mostly. I do a lot of focus stacks, and actually I'll back up here just a moment. Yeah. So it started pretty early this year, as it often does. We had that big snowstorm in March, and stuff was already flying. So here I am. Here's my setup in March after the big storm, catching some of the early species. So that's what it looks like. I have a ring light and I have another macro light that's got two arms, so I can direct the light where I need it.
Wow.
So I'll just kind of give you a quick overview of some of the stuff I do. I like the crypsis, the camouflage. Moths are just amazing masters of disguise, really. And what you're seeing are some of the common species around here. This one's facing left, this one's facing right. Those were the two of the same species. But you can see how well they blend in. The other one facing to the right. And I'll stop this one here. Here's the one in this picture. And hard to see with that little guy right there.
Yeah, I haven't seen one yet.
They are tough to spot. Man.
Yeah, they're just, it's incredible. And such diversity. Here's another one. Facing this way.
Yeah.
Here's two. One, two. These are all common species. These are flying now. There's one that looks like the lichen.
Woohoo, I can see that one.
Yeah. This one holds itself tight against the branch that it's on, so it kind of blends in. Here's another one.
So do they adapt to the specific tree they're on?
Well, they don't actually adapt to it. They're just that's their coloration. They tend to have. We'll see a little bit of close up.
Do they move around much?
So there's a fine tree they know look like them?
Well, they're not always successful, but more often than not, they do a pretty darn good job. And part of it is that they just have a variety of different tones and shades, and so they're kind of able to blend in.
That's
Some of
amazing.
them,
Do they move at all?
they tend to stay pretty inactive, not as inactive as you'd like sometimes if you're trying to shoot off 30 or 40 frames for a focus stack. But for the most part, during the daytime, they're inactive.
So what is your f-stop if you're doing that much focus stacking?
So with my particular camera at this point, I'm at f9.
Okay.
And I may take, depending upon how much depth of field I have to deal with, it may be 10 shots, it may be 100 shots. The smaller the individual, the more shots in general. And of course, the more relief there is in the bark or the lichen or whatever, the more shots you have to take as well. And I like to start a little bit before and a little bit after to make sure I got everything in focus.
And what software do you use to do the?
I use Serene Stacker for that.
Okay.
So here's another one facing downward. Same with this one.
Jeff, are you also a student of the moth as well as the photography of it?
Yeah, my background's in entomology.
Oh, okay. I forgot about that. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times it seems like predators, that when they can camouflage so well, they're trying to hide from predators. Do these moths have predators?
Yeah, yeah. Like the warblers, for example, are coming through and they are insectivorous birds.
How come other moths don't do this? This is just
Yeah, I mean, there's a variety of different strategies that they use, but probably the vast majority of moths are cryptic. They blend into their background.
so cool.
All right, where's
Your
the one in
photos are
this
awesome.
picture?
So this is, and some of their larvae as well. So here's an inchworm. Looks like it's part of the stick. And this species actually is like that all winter, just kind of hanging out, completely exposed all winter. Pretty crazy. There's another one. You see the caterpillar? Right here. I think I've shown this one before. Here's the caterpillar. And occasionally I'll find other things that are kind of blended in too. You see the spider here?
No.
It's taking up almost the whole length of this is like the stem of a grass. Here's its 8 eyes.
Okay.
And it's looking down.
Oh, wow.
Hey, spiders.
Yeah.
And here's a stink bug, a rough stink bug. That does a pretty good job of blending in as well. And one of the things that attracts me, aside from that there's such good, masters of disguise, is the diversity, not just of moths in general, but within a single species, there can be tons of variation. So this is called the lunate zale. He's facing this way. Here he is. But facing to the left. Another example of the same species, a completely different color. Another example, some of them have these patches on their wings that also tend to help them blend in, look like they're pieces of light. Another example, same species. Another example, most of them are dark like this one here. This one's looking this way. Another one, kind of intermediate. And another dark one. And these guys are kind of interesting because they're kind of iridescent as well. So you see a little bit of a purplish sheen here. That's actually from the iridescent scales that they have. This is a similar species. This is the maple zale. This is one that's flying now. And likewise, it's quite variable. So here's one, another one, pretty similar, but not quite the same. A lighter one, and a darker one. And another one.
How do you find these?
Well, it's something I've been doing for years and years. I used to collect with the net, people don't do that so much anymore. They do more with the camera these days. But when I was young, I had a good friend that I collected with. We'd have like competitions to see who could find the moths on the trees, basically. And in doing so, we became real experts. But even after we became experts, we'd go around a tree and we'd try to see who could find the most. And then we take the handle of our net and hit the tree to scare up the ones that we didn't see yet, because some of them are so well blended in. That same species. And again, pretty amazing. And here's one really quite different looking. And the same thing, some of them are not cryptic at all. They're very colorful, but they can be quite variable as well. So here's one form of this species. And here's a different form where it's kind of an olive green. Same with this one. This is a common species. Looks kind of like a dried leaf, but it can come in a variety of colors and patterns. Those are all the same species. And here just kind of an assortment to show some of the diversity. This one's kind of interesting because it holds its abdomen bent over its back. So you can't even see its head or its thorax. That's its abdomen falling over.
Those are beautiful.
Yeah, some of them are quite beautiful. And
especially when you can see them.
Pardon me?
Especially when you can actually see them.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there a better season to find them?
Well, they're the kind of peak of the season is coming up, late May, June, and in through August is a really big time. But it depends on the species. Some are just early spring, they're already done now. Those ones that I was getting when the snow was on the ground. Most of those species have come and gone as adults. They made it in their laid eggs, and you won't see the adults again until early spring next year again.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
any specific trees you're mostly looking for?
Pardon
me? Any specific trees you're mostly looking for, or any trees?
Yeah, it kind of depends if you're looking like the warblers. If you're looking for particular types of species, you're going to have better luck in a particular type of forest. So it really kind of depends. With me, I'm out in the country. I kind of have favorite trees just because they're convenient. They're in my yard. They're mostly in my front yard, really. But yeah, if you're looking for specific things, it helps, the same as with the birds, to kind of have an understanding of what habitats they're associated with and what food plants they prefer. So these kind of gaudy looking ones are that way deliberately because they're actually distasteful. So kind of warning colors, like a bee has got stripes on it. So just some other examples of some of the variety. Some of them rather bizarre in the way they hold their wings and the shape. Quite pretty. So this is a common sphinx moth we see around here. One of the things I like to do is get different views. So dorsal, ventral. You see the underside is really quite colorful. And from the side, you can see how they curve their abdomen. That's typical of these. Here's another
that
one
image. Were you shooting at night?
Most of these I'm shooting, outside on trees, but some of them I will bring inside. And I put a black felt background, and I try to distance it from the critter, and then I'll shoot that way. So that's what I do with that sphinx moth. So here's another example of one that has kind of a purple iridescence. You typically don't see it though, because this particular species likes to be in shaded and darkened areas. It likes to go in caves, for example, but really kind of pretty and odd because it's got the purple and kind of olive green speckles. And lately, I started playing around with getting really zooming in. So this is some detail of the scales and the hairs on the back of one of these critters.
Wow.
Kind of interesting. Another example. So some of these scales have really interesting structure. And, you couldn't possibly get much of this in focus if you were taking a single shot. Here's this case where you really have to do the focus stacking when you start getting this small, because this is in an area of maybe 1/4 of an inch wide. You're just not going to get it. without, stacking things together. Another example. And one more. I think that's it.
That was very cool.
Very cool. Jeff, are you okay if I share this when this YouTube is ready? I do work with an entomologist, and I told him about you, and he was asking me all these really like, well, what kind of moss? What? And I'm like, they were just cool, and he would love to see your photos. Is it okay if I share this with him?
Sure, no problem.
Okay. He'll think I'm cool because I know you. Thanks.
Did you shot most of them here in Wisconsin or in different places?
Yeah, these are all of the examples I showed are from our property here.
Oh, nice.
And many of them, almost all of them, are actually quite common species.
Hey, Elizabeth, this would be a great president's challenge for a month.
What would be the challenge? Just to find them?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Whoever finds the first one wins.
Just don't do it in January.
Yeah, well, you might actually find some in January, believe it or not. There are certain moths that are here as adults over the winter. They'll just, go in a sheltered place.
Oh.
And then when it gets warm, so if you get a January thaw, you'll see them.
On the trees, like on the bark of the trees, or somewhere in some.
Yeah, mostly on the bark of trees. Or if you have house lights and you look around at night and you have a January thaw, don't be surprised if you see some moths there. And some other things like winter crane flies, for example, are one of the things that are just out in the middle of winter.
Jeff, what pollinates a witch hazel? Is that a moth?
I'm not sure specifically.
Because they're blooming in like December.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
So something's pollinating it.
Yeah, there are things that are out, like, one of the main things that you'll see are those they look almost like mosquitoes, the winter crane flies. Those are active anytime it's a little bit above freezing. So those are probably a good candidate, but I don't know for sure with that particular species.
Okay.
You're muted, Elizabeth.
Dang it, I was talking about how fascinating that all was. So thank you for sharing. One other thing we do, Brad, is we have a monthly President's Challenge where the president will set up topics, and then it is up to the members to photograph that topic on their interpretation. So, because I don't know how to put slideshows together, Jeff does this for me. So this month was serene or peaceful. The photo challenge for May is through my window. So start thinking about what you can shoot through your window. Everyone's looking like, what's out there? So, if you want to do that, Jeff?
Yep, I'm just
Bringing it
getting
up.
it
All right.
opened up here.
Nice job, everyone. And thank you, Jeff, as usual.
No problem.
Scott Kelby does these weekly podcast things. And then I got this really awesome, his brand new Lightroom Classic, his Lightroom Classic book updated. Everything is in this book. And I thought, I want it. I'm going to learn how to do the slideshows. And this book, this really thick book covers everything except the slideshows. There is not one, the word slideshow does not show up once in this huge book on Lightroom and everything to do in Lightroom. So I let him know that. So anyway.
Can Lightroom do slideshows?
Yeah, that's what Jeff uses.
Yep,
Oh, really?
that's what I use to put them together.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I was so excited when I got the book. I'm like, yes. Oh well. All right, one other announcement. Every year we have our member show on a given topic. And this year's topic was what was it? Sunset to sunrise. And
Yeah.
images are due to Jane by May 24th, up to 8 images. Please do not wait till the last minute because that is a lot of work for Jane because she puts them all in a slideshow and does an amazing job putting that together. But it's for the June 2nd meeting. So please, if you're ready, just please send them to her. Her email is in the newsletter. Jane, I don't know if you want to add anything else.
Just be sure to mark them, Menomonee Falls. The newsletter had member show. Don't want to miss you. I try real hard not to, but I missed somebody last time. So, I get a lot of emails, a lot of junk emails. So please mark them well.
Yeah, it does say use member show in subject line, but I would put MFCC member show.
Yeah.
Just to make it stand out more. So. Awesome.
And the other thing I would add that's not on this subject, but for all of our members is we also have the member review meeting once a month where you bring via Zoom 10 images or more, and we all look at them together and you can talk about them and we can comment on them. We can give, critiques on them or just suggestions of how to improve it. So I encourage everybody to think about that. It's held on the last Tuesday of the month, not the fourth one, the last one at 7 o'clock.
Oh, I wonder if I could make this month then. Because I have Elgin on the fourth Tuesday of every month.
Yeah, it's the last one. So when there are 5 Tuesdays, it's 1 week later.
I will have to look into that. Not that I've hardly taken even 10 pictures this year, but.
So the sunset to sunrise is basically night photography?
Correct. But we didn't want to imply that it had to be sky, right? Because there's so much else you can do from sunset to sunrise.
All right, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
I assume blue hour should count too, right? Should qualify for this.
Well, yes, sunset to sunrise.
We don't ever throw any images out. So whatever you think sunrise to sunset is,
yeah,
I take it.
Yep.
So if it's broad daylight and you still think it's midnight, I'll take it.
I guess one announcement I want to make is that I'm on the hunt for a vice president for the group. Elizabeth, it's hard to believe, but your term's almost over.
I know.
And Bernard Hall will be our president next year.
I've been counting down the number of president's messages for the newsletter. And so now Ellen sends her emails to me and she says only 2 more.
Yeah, Bernard, you better get ready with your president messages.
Yep. And you get about a day before she gets between when you get the email and when she needs it back.
Sounds like a lot of pressure.
It is. I spend way too much time thinking about that.
But don't be surprised if I email or call you late at night when you're the weakest to try to get you to volunteer to be president.
That's how I got here.
Vice president, and then you step up to be president the following year. So I'll be working on that this month because we really need to vote on it in June.
Yep.
So if somebody wants to volunteer, I will always be willing to take a volunteer as
It's
well.
not horrible, people. Trust me. Trust me. Neither one, vice president or president. The worst part is the letter from the words from the president.
Hey, you use ChatGPT and it's amazing what it can come up with.
I always forget.
Yeah, not me. I have to do twice as many presidents at once. I works really well. So, but it is a very simple job. There is not a lot to it other than to run the meeting when you become president. And then there's a little bit.
If you like to do the slideshows.
Yep.
Yeah.
And doing the slideshows, but like Elizabeth said, she had a hard time doing it, so I just did them. I'm set up for doing that, so it's not a big deal. And we do all the programming for the season in August, so all that's taken care of for you. It's really just showing up every Tuesday, first Tuesday of the month. So not too hard.
No. It was worse being vice president and having to get the pizza. Which I failed miserably at too, and you all still let me be president, so.
Yeah, we'll let some of that slide right by.
All right. Anything else? We're a little early today, which I'm happy for, but if there's nothing, no questions. Anything, cameras, photography?
I have one other quick thing. I saw my first hummingbird today at our hummingbird feeder and my first oriole today.
Yep, and the grosbeaks beaks are back like crazy. Yep. Yep.
I guess I better get my hummingbird feeder up.
Yeah.
Still looking for an oriole.
He was here early.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I've got something for the bird lovers. I don't know if you've been on Facebook or not, but there is a marabou stork on the loose in Fond du Lac that's an escapee from a zoo. And so they're trying to, everybody's tracking where it is, and they're trying to set up a situation where they can capture it and return it to its owners. But some zoo in the Dells, this bird escaped from there, and it's this great big huge gigantic stork, and people are just like, what am I even seeing? You know, they're hilarious.
I've seen pictures of that thing on top of people's houses. It's just sitting on top of houses. It's walking down the street.
Right downtown.
Yeah, there's not a care in the world for that thing. He's just living his best life right now.
Interesting.
Well, if there's nothing else, we can adjourn for the evening. And everybody go to Shady Lane on Saturday. I have company coming, so I can't. But everyone else should go to Shady Lane on Saturday and have a good month.
Jane, you want to ride with me?
I think Jesse too. I think we could all three go.
Okay, yeah, just meet at my house.
Okay.
Okay.
What time?
Let's see. They said we'd be there 8:30.
Probably 8, huh?
Probably 8, yeah. I mean, we don't have
Okay.
to be like right on time because nobody's keeping score, but yeah, 8 o'clock is good.
Okay.
Okay.